So back in 2023, there were a series of videos that were going viral on the internet. What they were claiming was that they were being assaulted by very strange people who could fly, who were apparently impervious to gunfire, and who were, at least in some cases, attempting to peel people's faces off, that they're apparently using for the most nefarious things imaginable.
At a basic level, it's human trafficking.
Organ harvesting, human trafficking, who knows what they're doing.
Now, I have to ask you, this is slightly changing topics to bring us a little bit more down to earth, or maybe beam us up to outer space, I'm not quite sure. Who are the Peruvian face
Okay,
peelers?
so back in 2023, in the summer of 2023, specifically July, there were a series of videos that were going viral on the internet, on social media. And these videos depicted villagers living out in the jungles of Peru who were running around at night with their guns, discharging their firearms into the jungle, screaming, very animated about something happening in their village. And it turns out that what they were claiming was that they were being assaulted by these very strange people who could fly, who were apparently impervious to gunfire, and who were, at least in some cases, attempting to peel people's faces off. And some of the villagers were calling them the Pelacaras. And before I get into this story, let me set up this legend of the Pelacaras. The legend of the face peelers in Peru goes back to the mid-'80s, not before. Goes back to the mid-'80s. And
so this is not some ancient Peruvian legend. This is like within living memory.
And the reason why I say it doesn't go before is because I talked to villagers in Peru about this, and they'll tell you that, like guys my age will tell you that my father told me about the face peelers, or my mom told me about the face peelers, and I would ask, well, what about your grandparents? Did they know about them? No, it started in my father's generation, and so we figured out it was sometime in the '80s when this phenomenon.
It's just like Ollie North, Iran-Contra, Cold War kind of thing.
Yeah, it started in the '80s, and the face peeler legend, it's kind of like a boogeyman legend in the jungle. The mothers will tell their kids, don't go out in the jungle by yourself at night, or the face peelers will get you. And so from time to time, people living in these remote villages, the indigenous people, especially in Peru, someone would go missing. A member of these populations of these communities would go missing, and then they would mysteriously show up in the jungle or floating in the river with either part or all of their face missing and surgically removed, not like chewed off,
not like by a leopard bit your face.
Right, not chewed off by a jaguar or piranha or something like that. Their face would be surgically removed. And so there are two ideas in the legend about who's perpetrating this face peeling. And some of the indigenous people will say that these are gringos. That these are gringos who are harvesting organs, because apparently in some cases they also found that the organs were gone.
It's hard to sell a face, though. There aren't that.
It's hard to sell.
I guess it happened. There are face transplants, not very many though.
Especially in the '80s.
Especially in the '80s, there weren't very many.
So that's what some of the indigenous people have said and would say to this day. And then others will say, no, it's not gringos, it's aliens, precisely because of the apparent technology being deployed in this phenomenon. So the villagers were claiming that these incursions were the face peelers, the Pelacaras. And again, some of them thought these are gringos, others thought these were aliens. And there were a handful of videos that surfaced in July of 2023. And one of the more prominent ones that probably got the most traction online was from the village of San Antonio de Pintuyacu, which is located in the Peruvian Amazon, northern Peruvian Amazon, in the district of Nanay. And this is northwest of the city of Iquitos. And I was obviously very interested in this face peeler phenomenon, specifically because I lived in that part of the jungle. I'm very familiar with the jungle around Iquitos. And as a young man, I was 19 years old, living with indigenous people and some of these communities. That's where I learned Spanish.
Hmm.
And so I was especially intrigued by this phenomenon. And I had heard of the face peeler phenomenon
Yeah.
when I was living in those communities. And so naturally, fans of mine were asking me, begging me to go to Peru to investigate. Well, luckily for me, I didn't have my passport at the time because I had sent it in to get renewed.
Yeah.
And so it just turned out that I didn't have my passport. So I was glad because I really didn't want to get involved in this situation.
Yeah,
So
I'd like to keep my face.
Exactly. Yeah, I kind of like having a face.
Yeah.
So I just sort of sat back and watched this unfold like everybody else and was waiting for somebody to go do an investigation. And it was, July is when this really broke out, mid-July to end July, and it went into August, and it wasn't going away.
Yeah.
And there were various incursions. I mean, it was a big deal. It was all over the Peruvian press. The Peruvian press was taking this really, really seriously. And then ultimately it made its way to the American press. And the villagers were desperate. The villagers of San Antonio de Pintuyacu in particular were begging the Navy to come and protect their village. There's a Navy base in Iquitos, and they were begging the Navy to come protect their village. In fact, they were making videos where they're holding signs saying, please help us, send patrols, something like that. And nobody was going. Nobody was helping these people. And more videos were surfacing. And then there was an attempted abduction of a 15-year-old girl in the village. Her name is Talia. And she was being abducted by these face peelers, and she was saved, and I'll get into that in a little bit. And when I saw that, I knew this is serious, because she was unconscious and she had incisions under her jawline. And I thought, okay, this is serious. I know these people. I know these indigenous communities. They're not making this up. And so ultimately, the provincial government sent, in the wake of this attempted abduction, sent 2 police officers from the city of Iquitos, and they had a Navy escort. So they went in a Navy boat, not like a ship, just a small Navy escort.
Yeah.
They went to the village, and they did an investigation.
Yeah.
And because they had to, because there was an attempted abduction.
Yeah.
So they went to the village and they interviewed some people, and it was these 2 police officers who confected a ridiculous story. They said that the villagers never said this, they said that the villagers were being attacked by river miners with state-of-the-art jetpacks.
Huh.
And when I heard that, I instantly knew it was absurd, because what the villagers were saying about these assailants is that they were wearing some kind of armor plating, armored bodysuits, head to foot. They had helmets. They had the helmets had almond-shaped eye lenses, and some of them shot these guys at point-blank range with shotguns, 16 gauge, to no effect. They said that these assailants could fly, that they could hover off the ground, and that
of their own bodies or on some contraption.
That gets a little complex, but the initial story was that they could hover. The one guy said a meter off the ground, and they could shoot up into the sky. And if you've ever been to the Amazon jungle,
I have.
The idea of trying to navigate through the canopy with a jetpack is absurd. At night, by the way, absurd. And then furthermore, the idea that Peruvian river miners are in possession of this technology is even more absurd. All these people who were parroting this story, this false story, so confidently, the Peruvian press picked it up, and then the American news agencies here ran with it, like News Nation and others, ran with it, that, mystery solved, it was miners with jetpacks. And it's like, okay, hold on a minute. You people have never encountered river miners in Peru. I have. And you don't know anything about the Amazon jungle if you think you can fly around the canopy with a jetpack at night. So I knew it was absurd. And I couldn't believe that the media bought the story. I couldn't believe it. So I got my passport back, and I resolved to go, because I couldn't believe no one went out there to to conduct an investigation. Nobody had gone except for these 2 police officers. So
I'm even stuck on the jetpack. Like I guess there are jetpacks. There's like it's not like in cartoons, I assume, but
so there is some jetpack technology that's extremely loud, and there's some battery operated jetpack technology because, and I say battery operated because these guys flew silently. That's the other detail that I didn't mention. They were silent.
okay.
So it had to be like battery operated or something like that. And there is some technology like that out there today, but it's very limited, and it's you can't fly for very long because the battery runs out. And so
And you probably can't get through the canopy of the jungle.
no, and it's very expensive, and it's not really available in the commercial market. And so the story was that the cartels
Okay.
were funding this operation, and the whole purpose of this bizarre phenomenon was to drive the villagers off of their land so
Oh.
that the river miners could mine for gold
Well-
in the rivers, which are under their jurisdiction, by the way. These indigenous communities,
Yeah.
that's their jurisdiction. They have oversight over that. Traditionally, the proving government has conceded land, just like here, except we put Indians in the reservation over there. They still live in their traditional.
So we don't
areas.
tend to give our reservations gold, but I could see, look,
Or jetpacks.
or jetpacks for that matter. We do though. If it were the cartel, I could see why the cartel wants money, and there's money here, and they would like terrorizing people, and they cut people's faces off. So that kind of checks out. The jetpack
And the cartels
thing,
do cut people's faces.
yes,
They
yeah.
do.
But the jetpack thing is that's a little weirder.
So I didn't know what was happening. I was following the story. I did a couple videos on my YouTube channel about it, and I didn't know if it was cartels. Maybe there's some cartel activity, but the basic premise I knew was absurd. So I resolved to go to Peru myself, and I was accompanied by my friend Doug Thornton, who was an infantry marine and a DHS operator. We didn't want to just go to the village, a couple of gringos showing up and, tell me about the space aliens that are attacking you.
Hola.
So we wanted to provision the village if we were going to go. We wanted to provision them with technology. The men of the village were conducting patrols at night. They were exhausted. They were no longer going out to their chakras, to their farms because of this. They were terrified. I mean, these people were terrified.
Yeah.
And so they were running out of food. They're pleading with the government to help them. Nobody's helping them. So we decided to provision them. And in fact, I got in contact through a colleague of mine, Brazilian ufologist Ronnie Vernet, and he connected me with somebody in the village, with one of the villagers, and this young man's name was Christian. He was the teacher there, and it was Christian who had taken the footage of the incidents that went viral on the internet. And so I talked to Christian. I speak Spanish. I talked to Christian, and he suggested that I record audio, and express my intention, and that he would give that audio recording to the council of elders. And I did that. He gave the audio recording, played the audio recording for them to the chief, the Apu, and his elders in the village. And they responded very warmly and invited me officially to come to their village. So they sent me like this official document and were inviting me to come to do this investigation. So once I had that, I made arrangements for a riverboat to take me up the river. This is deep in the jungle.
Yeah.
And it's a couple days up the river, the Pinto Yaku, up the Nanay and then the Pinto Yaku. And so in addition to the technological implements that we were bringing with us, we were bringing radios, high-powered flashlights, some night vision goggles technology that had recording capability so that they could record the phenomenon, and some other gear as well, some other tactical gear for their patrols. And in addition to that, the villagers were in need of medical supplies and food, and so with the help of a mutual friend, Pastor Darren Tyler from Conduit Church, Pastor Tyler and some of the men from his church raised some money to help us provision the village.
Oh,
So,
great.
So thank you to the men of Conduit Church.
Hmm.
And so we were able to provision the village with these supplies. I was met in Iquitos by the Apu. The chief of the village met me in Iquitos and went up the river with us. He escorted us up the river with some of the guys from his village. And also, because I didn't know what I was getting into, I thought there's a good chance the cartel's involved here.
Yeah.
So I contracted with 2 jungle commando Navy guys, Peruvian guys, to go with us. You can do that in Peru.
Yeah.
Active duty guys.
Really?
And so they went up the river, and so we went to the village on this riverboat. By the way, all of this footage, we filmed it on GoPros and stuff. It's all on my YouTube channel in a video. We went up the river, and I've been in these communities a lot, as I said, very, very familiar with the cultures out there. I speak a dialect. It's Spanish, but it's a form of Spanish that mixes in a lot of Quechua.
Yep. Yeah.
And they call it charapa. And that's the kind of Spanish I speak naturally, is charapa, because I learned to speak it in the jungle. So they always find that humorous.
Yeah.
It's like if a Peruvian...
It's not Castilian Spanish.
No, it's like if you met a Peruvian here in the United States who spoke with a really, really strong
Tennessee accent.
or Louisiana accent.
Yeah.
Right? That's what I was like to them. So I arrive at the village, and it was like I was greeted by a small army of guys with shotguns. And I've never seen that before. I mean, everybody's got guns out in the jungle. Even though you're not allowed to own guns in Peru, but they give special... They give special, what's the word I'm looking for here? They give special concessions to the indigenous communities.
Yeah.
And so there were dozens and dozens of guys who met me at the shore, armed to the teeth. Yeah. But luckily they thankfully had smiles on their faces. Yeah. They didn't look like they were.
Said, I'm not here to take any faces.
Exactly.
I promise you.
And we were very, very much aware of the fact that here's a couple of gringos coming in right on the heels of this face peeler phenomenon, and that maybe half the villagers are going to think we're the face peelers. So we were a little bit nervous about that. So they received us very warmly into the village. In fact, they brought us into this building at the center of the village called the Tambo.
Yeah.
And it's a government outpost, and it's a communication center that was built by the provincial government. And they put it there specifically because this is a very important village. These are the Iquitu people, and very, very ancient indigenous culture living in the Amazon. And this was like the last outpost of civilization before just a vast uninhabited tract of Amazon jungle. Yeah. And so there happened to be a communications outpost there, which means there was internet. And that's a very important component of the story, because the villagers, even though these are indigenous people, and they're not wearing grass skirts, these are civilized villagers, they watch all the same movies we do. Yeah. They're on YouTube. They have Facebook accounts because they sit in the Tambo with their cell phones, and they're able to have internet access way out there in the middle of the jungle.
They better subscribe to the Michael Knowles YouTube channel. I don't know how to say that in
You're going to have to
Charapa. Yeah.
You're going to have to start a channel
Quechua,
just for the villagers of San Antonio Pinto Yaku. So anyway, they received us very warmly. They did this traditional dance for us, and we drink masato, which is masticated yucca, and it was really cool. All that's filmed on my YouTube channel, and then I initiated the investigation. And we interviewed dozens and dozens of people from the village, and we got the same story from everybody. First of all, it was apparent that these people it was like we were encountering people with PTSD. Huh. It was immediately apparent to us that whatever happened in this village, it was serious.
How many of them had firsthand experience of these, rather than, my grandma was attacked last night,
I shouldn't say most of them, probably half of the villagers.
Half of them had seen
had experienced the phenomenon. Okay. And also, let me give you the details of what this phenomenon actually was. Okay. So, as I began to interview these people, a couple of things became immediately apparent. Number one, the incursions would begin only at night, right after sundown, and the way that they knew that these assailants were coming is they would see these little like flying saucers in the sky, these little saucers, and they'd see the saucers hovering around in the sky, and then the saucers would go down into the canopy, and then shortly thereafter, 2 of the assailants, in many cases, would be found making an incursion into the village. And what these saucers were circular hoverboards. So these guys were flying on circular hoverboards over the canopy, and then they would land in the jungle, land the hoverboards in the jungle, disembark, and then come into the village, sneak into the village.
Okay.
Many of the villagers saw the saucers. Some of the guys would flash their flashlights up at them and would see a guy surfing on one of these things. And as I said earlier, they were dressed head to foot in armored bodysuits with helmets. And one of the villagers likened them famously on one of these videos that surfaced in July to the Green Goblin from the Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And you remember the Green Goblin flew around on that apparatus, and he had a bodysuit. But in this case, he had a green bodysuit, and he had the helmet and the almond-shaped eyes. So it was actually, that's very close to what they were seeing, like the Green Goblin, except they weren't green, they were black. They were wearing some sort of what we think was some sort of stealth armor. And one guy swore to me, the one he shot at point blank range was dressed in a silver armored bodysuit.
The Silver Surfer.
The Silver Surfer.
Yeah.
So everybody else said black. This one guy said, no, I'm telling you it was silver.
Huh.
And he shot this guy at point blank range 15 feet away, knocked the guy back. The guy fell back. And I guess I should say to begin with that this assailant was floating, but not on a disc. There was some sort of mechanism on the bottom of his boots. Many of the villagers told me this, that there were 2 discs on the bottom of their footwear, and they were glowing. These discs were glowing, and that these guys could float around. So aside from the hoverboards, which they landed and then disembarked from their hoverboards, they could still hover around just on some kind of technology incorporated into their footwear. Huh. Many of the villagers told me this. In fact, the Apu told me that they would find their tracks in the jungle, but they weren't boots. They were 2 circles. Like you could see the outline of like a boot, but it was 2 circles. Like there were some sort of like pads, circular devices on the bottom. And so these assailants, they were wearing backpacks, but they were like hard shell backpacks, and they weren't jetpacks. So the flight technology was in their boots and was in the hoverboards. Yeah. The backpacks, we surmise, were batteries, reactors of some kind. Yeah. But it gets even more bizarre, because not only did these people encounter these assailants on these circular hoverboards, they also numerous villagers encountered what I can only describe as advanced aerospace vehicles, UFO type craft, that would hover silently over the village. And these craft were shaped like an acorn on its side. Okay. So it's kind of a delta shape, not exactly like an acorn, but more or less like an acorn.
Like a Star Wars destroyer.
Yeah, something like that, but more rounded. Okay. And they were about the size of a large helicopter, so like the size of like a Black Hawk or a Chinook. Okay. They were silent, and I interviewed a handful of villagers who had close encounters with these craft. One lady said she came out of her house because they were all living in terror. Yeah. And during the month, the entire month of July and part of the month of July, these villagers were living in abject terror. She said that they would all be huddled up every night. Everybody would be huddled up in their house.
What year is it?
In their hut. This is 2023. Everybody is huddled up in their house with their machetes and their shotguns, scared to death. And she said that they would hear the assailants come into the village because these assailants, she told me something bizarre. She said that they would knock on the walls and they would pull on the boards, because these are primitive huts with boards and grass roofs. Yeah. And they would pull on the boards and bang on the walls. And she said sometimes they would see these guys, and they would always come 2 by 2. They would see these guys, and they were terrifying, she said, because they had these glowing almond-shaped eyes. eye lenses.
Yeah.
Some said glowing yellow, some said glowing green, which we think maybe is some kind of night vision technology.
Yeah.
And she said she saw one jump over her house. He had some kind of technology in his footwear where he was able to leap over her house. And she said one day she came out and she looked up, and right above her house was one of these craft, just hovering silently. She said it was matte black, it's hovering silently. And another individual told me he was at 3 a.m, he went out to pull up his nets in the river. And he said he's pulling his nets up, and suddenly it's like the sun came up. He said it was like somebody turned the lights on, and everything was illuminated around him, and he was in his canoe. He looks up, and he said about 20 to 30 feet above him is one of these craft hovering there silently. He said, but it was translucent. He said, I could see the body of the craft like mesh, like looking through a screen door.
Yeah, yeah.
And I could see two individuals inside of it. And he described it in great detail. He drew it for me on an acrylic chalkboard. I filmed it. And he described how it was just hovering silently, had these floodlights on, and then it deployed these. It didn't have wings. It had little stubby protrusions instead of wings. And these protrusions opened up, and they deployed a series of rapidly blinking lights. And then they closed, they folded back in. And then it just sort of turned and started to move away. And he said when it started to move away, it generated a low frequency hum. And this isn't one or two people, multiple people in the village saw this craft, described it in the exact same terms, drew it in the dirt for me, and this guy on the acrylic chalkboard. So, initially when we first began our investigation, we were in the village for 3 days. When we initially began our investigation, Doug and I, the first day, we heard about 6 testimonies. We went out into the areas where they encountered these things, and they described what they saw and what happened. We went back to we were staying on the riverboat that was parked, that was harbored right on the bank of the river, right by the village.
Yeah, yeah.
And we went back and we huddled up with our security guys, with our Navy guys, and we said, okay, we think this is the cartels. Yeah. This is before they started telling me about the advanced aerospace vehicles. I hadn't heard that yet.
Go to balanceofnature.com, use promo code Knowles. I have a totally non-controversial question for you. What is the worst vegetable that there is? You know what people are going to say? They're going to say Brussels sprouts, I bet. And that's such a calumny. Again, I love Brussels sprouts. Some people say broccoli. I love broccoli. Some people say tomato. Tomato's a fruit. No, nobody says tomato. Everybody likes tomato. Anyway, kale kind of sucks. I don't like kale, but I'm digressing here. Even if you genuinely like fruits and vegetables, most of us don't eat nearly the variety that we probably should. You find the 5 things you like, and then you just rotate them forever. That is one reason that I love Balance of Nature. Their whole health system is made from 47 real fruits, vegetables, spices, and fiber, making it an easy way to add more whole food variety to your daily routine. 47. Can you even name 47 fruits and vegetables? I also appreciate how simple Balance of Nature is. There's no complicated routine. There's no elaborate meal prep. It's easy, even for me, even a guy like me. Even on the road, you can do it. Go to balanceofnature.com today and subscribe to the whole health system or any of their subscriptions. Get an additional 10% off with promo code Knowles, KNWLES. That is balanceofnature.com, promo code Knowles.
Our initial thought was this is cartels. And we decided that we need to make sure that if this is cartels, it's likely they're watching us or they know that we're up here. And we need to make sure that our security at night, somebody's up, somebody's constantly surveilling the area. Because, we really thought we were in danger at first.
Of course.
But then as the testimonies were coming forward in the following day about these aerospace vehicles, then I knew we're not dealing with the cartels. Yeah. Cartels do not have advanced aerospace vehicles. And
I mean, they've got impressive resources, some of the cartels. But
helicopters, they've got helicopters and probably, armored vehicles and everything like that.
But not many spaceships.
They don't have many spaceships.
No.
So we knew once we started hearing these, once we started realizing that there's advanced technology being deployed, that we're not in the realm of cartels anymore.
That's probably a relief to your guards too. You say like, hey, Captain Rodriguez, you can take a nap now because you're not going to stop.
Oh no, they still stayed up all night. They still stayed up all night, and we did too, because we were there we wanted to film the phenomenon.
Yeah.
So we were up to like 3 in the morning, because usually the phenomenon usually would begin, as I said, right after dark.
Yeah.
And then carry through the night. So we were able to interview Talia, the 15-year-old girl who was being abducted, who was nearly abducted. And my first encounter with Talia was one evening. We went into the village, and in the evening in these indigenous communities, the villagers are all in the square,
Yeah.
and they're all the men play soccer, all the women play volleyball. And so they're all playing soccer and volleyball, and we walk into the square, and we notice a teenage girl sitting all by herself up against a hut. And she's sitting there with a smile on her face, just watching her friends play volleyball. And we found out that that was Talia. That was the girl that was nearly abducted. And so I talked to the Apu of the village, and I said, we would like to talk to Talia, but we don't want to approach ourselves.
Yeah.
So can you go and talk to her and see if she'll come and let us interview her? And so he went and got her father. And in the meantime, Talia is just sitting there enjoying herself. She looks over at us. And as soon as she locks eyes on us, she starts to tremble. And she turns her head and she takes her hair and pulls it over the side of her face to hide her face from us. And she's trembling. And we could tell she's crying.
Yeah.
So as soon as she saw us, it was like PTSD.
Yeah.
And we really felt bad for her because obviously something traumatic had happened to this young lady.
Yeah.
And her father went over and talked to her and then came over to us and said, I'm sorry, but she does not want to talk to you. She's frightened, she's crying, she's very traumatized, she doesn't want to talk to you. And she was associating us with her abductors.
Yeah.
And so he said, hey, come by my house tomorrow morning. Just come by in the morning. I'll bring her out. I'll talk to her. I'll get her to talk to you guys. So the next morning we showed up at his house in the village, and we went into the backyard, and he brought Talia out to us. And when Talia came out, when she saw us, she started trembling and crying. I mean, it was abundantly apparent that this girl had major PTSD,
Yeah.
severe. So long story short, she started to tell me what had happened. And what happened to Talia was in the midst of when these incursions were happening in July, in the midst of this situation, one evening she's in her backyard and she's got like this long stick and she's knocking fruit down from the tree to make a drink as the sun is going down. And she knocked one of these fruits down on the ground and she bent over to pick it up, and she said she felt a wind at her back and the dry leaves were rustled on the ground. She went to pick up this fruit and she looked behind her and she said she saw a man, very, very tall. By the way, all of the villagers said that the assailants were very tall, taller than me. And I'm really tall in Peru.
Yeah.
And I'm 6'1". Most of them said most of the villagers were describing people who were 7 feet tall, 6.5 to 7 feet tall. That's what they were all saying. So she said that she looks back and she sees this guy dressed in a black armored bodysuit, helmet and everything, almond-shaped eye lenses, surfing on a circular hoverboard. In her backyard, there's like a gully. It's a forested gully. There's jungle down there.
Yeah.
They have a little chicken coop back there, and there's like this yard full of jungle, and then her neighbors are around, right? And he said, this guy came surfing up the hill of the gully, landed next to her and grabbed her from behind.
Yeah.
And he put his hand over her mouth and he grabbed her. And as he was doing that, she saw another one, the second one, come up, same thing, surfing on this hoverboard, landed in front of her and grabbed her feet. And then she even described some of the body armor. She said they had hard body armor on their arms. It wasn't all over their body. It was like a suit with body armor on it.
Okay.
And she said that when they lifted off the ground, holding her, one like this with covering her mouth from behind and the other one holding her feet, when they lifted off the ground, they reached down and touched something on their boots. And that engaged the technology, and they lifted up. So now they got her on their hoverboards.
Yeah.
And they proceed to take her, fly her behind the chicken coop. They land, and then one of them takes out some cream and some powder, and he starts to mix the cream and powder together, and then he takes a syringe, which seems to us it's a nasal syringe, sucks up the powder and shoots it up her nose.
Okay.
And it makes her delirious. It makes her incapacitated. But she's still conscious, but now she's kind of, whatever it is.
Loopy.
Yeah, she's not all there.
Yeah.
But after this, they took out another cream, and she said this one looked like a tube of toothpaste.
Yeah.
And the guy put it, and they had gloves on. The guy put it in his hand, and they wiped it on the gloves, and then they began to spread it on her face.
Okay.
And remember, there's a guy in front, and the other guy has her by the mouth and behind. So the guy in front is spreading it on her face. And she said she heard the guy holding her from behind say, be careful, don't put too much on. It's going to ruin the flesh.
Okay. Now, what language is he saying this in?
Spanish. They're speaking Spanish.
Okay.
But she told me, because of course I was very interested in this detail I hadn't heard before, that she hears these guys speaking. And so I inquired. They're speaking Spanish, obviously, because that's all she
understood
speaks.
it, yeah.
And I said, well, what kind of Spanish did they speak? Did they have an accent? She said, yes. She called him the gringo.
Yeah.
The guy was holding her mouth. The gringo had a gringo accent. I said, well, what about the other guy? No, he sounded just like us. So I thought, okay, if she's recalling this accurately, you got like a Peruvian operator and a gringo.
Yeah.
And so then after they smeared this cream on her face, she said she felt her face go numb.
Okay.
And then they took out what sounds like, in her description, sounds like a laser, is it a scalpel?
Like a yeah, okay.
Is that the word, scalpel?
Scalpel.
Scalpel.
Scalpel, yeah. There's a scapular, which I wear, but no, scalpel. Yes, scalpel.
Like a blade that doctors use for surgeries. But she said it wasn't just a blade, it was like a laser thing.
Okay.
And they started to make an incision under her jawline. And she had 2 incisions, so they were cutting too low, and then they went up higher. So they're cutting right here under her jaw. And as they're doing this, she's realizing they're about to take my face off. Remember, this isn't the first incursion, so everybody in the village thinks they're being attacked by the face peelers.
Yeah.
And here's 15-year-old Talia having the face peelers.
Who she's heard of.
They're all staying up at night, walking. The men are doing patrols every night. So she's thinking, they got me. They're going to cut my face off.
Yeah.
And she knows she has one more opportunity. If she can break loose, she has one opportunity to scream.
Yeah.
And she starts to wiggle. And she said the guy in front slapped her in the face. So they start cutting. She starts writhing. Yeah. The guy in front slaps her in the face. And when he did that, he knocked her loose.
Okay.
From the guy holding her.
Yeah.
And she screamed. She let out a blood-curdling scream. And remember, the villagers are in a state of vigilance.
Yeah.
They're sitting there with their flashlights or walking patrols. They hear her scream, her brother and the neighbors, and they come running. And they're on scene probably in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
They're on scene. And this is where her story ends and their story begins, because she goes unconscious. Okay. She remembers when she screamed, she remembers them saying, let's go, we have to go. And the one guy said, we can't leave her behind. So he grabbed her, this is the last thing she remembers, he grabbed her from her hair, by her hair, and started dragging her. Like he's floating on his disc, dragging her, trying to pull her up into the air. And they couldn't do it. So they dropped her. That's the last thing she remembers, being pulled by her hair and dropped. They were dragging her up the hill to go up and out. This is when the villagers show up, her brother and some of the others. They see Talia laying on the ground. She's got blood on her neck. She's face down. And these 2 guys surfing on these hoverboards.
So they see the guys.
Oh, they see them. They're on scene.
It's not because it could be she admits she's loopy, she's delusional. If they just show up and see the girl.
Oh no, they see the guys.
Okay.
We talked to them. And her dad was explaining all this to me as well. They see the guys surfing on the hoverboards.
Yeah.
And when the villagers show up, they go woof, through the canopy on the hoverboards. So it was very visceral. Okay, these were not people fantasizing.
Yeah.
These were people who were frightened. These are people who had PTSD.
Yeah.
She had the scars on her neck. And there's video of her right after this happened. She went unconscious, and she was unconscious for a long time, and her face was numb and swollen. And the incision was very precise, so it wasn't like an open wound. It was very, very precise incision. And so there were multiple encounters. That was the most
But what do they do with the
dangerous
girl?
encounter.
I mean, do they take her to?
They took her down
doctor
the
or
river
anything?
to the next village down that had a medical post.
Okay.
She was treated, mainly treated for, I mean, whatever they shot up her nose
Yeah.
rendered her ultimately unconscious. And it didn't wear off for days. And her face, as I said, her face was inflamed. And then she woke up and she was diagnosed with severe PTSD afterward. Her father showed me the paperwork.
Yeah. Of course.
We actually paid for her to go to see a psychiatrist in Iquitos because we felt really bad for her.
Yeah, of course.
This little girl's life was not little girl, this adolescent girl it was sad. I mean, so this is a very real, tangible, face-to-face kind of phenomenon. This isn't people imagining things. This is the villagers are all saying the same thing.
Yeah.
One guy said, I interviewed this one guy, and he said that there was a night where the assailants were making an incursion into the village.
Yeah.
The villagers spotted them. Remember, they're walking patrols. The villagers spot them, and the men start to run after them. One of them, at least. I don't remember if it was two guys or one, but they were running after this guy. And he said, I don't know who these people are or what they are, but he said, what I can tell you is that they didn't move like a human being. He said they were inhumanly agile.
Huh.
And I personally think we're maybe looking at some sort of exosuit technology. Maybe that's why they're so tall. Again,
What do you mean an exosuit?
like an exosuit, like there's some kind of technology built into their suit that allows them to run faster,
Oh yeah.
to jump,
Yeah.
do, like a military exosuit of some kind.
Yeah.
Now, keep in mind, half of the village is convinced these are aliens. Okay, half are convinced they're aliens, half are convinced they're gringos.
Yeah.
And they chased this guy through the jungle, and they said he was fast. He jumped into the river. He swam across the river, jumped out of the river onto the bank, and then flew off. Or he just alighted and disappeared, and not vanished, but but moved off.
Got away.
He got away. So they came, closer. At least they made the effort to try and capture these guys. They put up a perimeter of traps around their village. They set up 9 traps, and these are traps that they commonly use in the jungle to shoot game.
Yeah.
And they're not guns. They're just like tubes with a hammer mechanism and
A charge or something.
and a cartridge, shotgun cartridge. And what they did was they realized that their birdshot wasn't having any effect.
Yeah.
So they would tell me they heard it dinking off of the armor,
Yeah,
the BBs, the birdshot, 16 gauge shotgun, the cartridges, the BBs were just dinking off of the armor. And so what they started to do is open up their cartridges and melt the BBs basically into buckshot.
Yeah, right.
And so they set up these 9 traps, and with string triggers. That's how they do it. These are very dangerous. People get their ankles blown off all the time in the jungle with these things.
Yeah.
And they would hear the traps going off at night, and then they would run out there, and there was no sign that anybody had been hit. Just the footprints, the 2 circle footprints, right, on each foot.
Yeah.
That's all they would see, the footprints. And it's almost as if, to me, it's as if these guys the assailants were just lighting the traps off for fun.
Yeah.
They didn't shoot anybody, and they raised them up so that they would be at the knee to shoot the knees. Well, tragically, one of the ladies from the village walked through the trap shortly before we arrived to the village and blew a hole in her thigh. She survived and she kept her leg, but blew a hole in her thigh. So they took the traps down before we got there.
Yeah, that's probably good.
So
I mean, bad for her, but good for you that she didn't step.
Yeah, and in fact, there was a guy. We brought some anti-venom because a guy had been bit by a venomous snake, and so we brought anti-venom. But that's just an ancillary detail.
Yeah. I'd like to avoid both the Home Alone Quechua booby traps and the venomous snakes. Yeah.
But it was just the whole experience was it was surreal. There's no question that the villagers had experienced something extraordinary, physical. There's no question to us that they had witnessed technology because the testimonies were consistent.
Yeah.
But
now there's a question, I think, on most people's minds. What were the guys?
Okay, so This wasn't the only village that was assaulted.
Huh.
Numerous villages in the area were assaulted, and in fact, there was heightened UFO activity during that time. So there was a boy from a village who claimed that there was a saucer, flying saucer, that was pursuing him and shooting some kind of beam at him and picking him off the ground. And then there was a group of college students who were in the jungle on some assignment, and they all witnessed a being, some kind of being, like non-human entity walking in the jungle. There's all kinds of stories like this that were happening around that same period of time.
Now, look, a skeptic would say, I'm not saying I am a skeptic here, but a skeptic would say, well, could this be like the Salem witch trials, where people really, there is a communal phenomenon or perception. It's a communal psychosis, though, where you say, I saw Lady Sally, fly her broomstick over my house last night.
No question, there was psychosis, no question about it. People were freaking out all over the jungle in Peru, not just in the Alto Nanay region, all over the jungle.
Yeah.
There were incursions, apparently, that were happening hundreds of miles away from this area, in the region of Tarapoto, in that area, and then near Pucallpa, which is further south and on the border of Brazil. So Peru was gripped with this face peeler flap that was happening, and everybody was talking about it. So yes, there is certainly an element of psychosis.
Yes.
Anything that bizarre that you see, if you're a Peruvian at that time,
it was
oh my
a
God,
face peeler.
It's a face peeler.
Yeah.
So, but here's the thing. The narrative, once the narrative of the jetpack miners was distributed by the media, everybody lost interest in the story. Everybody thought, oh, okay, it's just those pesky jetpack miners.
Yeah.
Just trying to drive these villagers off of
Had
their
a few of them in my
land.
backyard last week.
Yeah, right, exactly. And in fact, News Nation, I watched an episode with News Nation. They didn't talk to me. They talked to somebody else. And they were just sort of laughing about it. Oh yeah, it's just, this happens all the time. And I'm like thinking, wait a minute, you don't know any of the details here. None.
So they just ignore the testimony of the
Yes,
villagers.
and the story was definitively debunked because there were incidents that happened in the city of Nauta, okay? It's 36,000 inhabitants.
Yeah.
There's a military installation there. The Navy's there. The Army's there. There's helicopters. There's a large police presence in Nauta. It's the only city that you can drive to from Iquitos. And you can't get to Iquitos, by the way, except by boat or air. There's no roads that go to it. And these incursions and this phenomena was happening there. So if you're going to say that this is jetpack miners trying to drive these villagers off their land, spook them,
right. Why would they go to the city?
why are they, that's a soft target. Why are they attacking a hard target with helicopters and automatic weapons? That doesn't make, and nobody pointed this out except for me.
Huh.
So that can't be the full explanation.
But could it be the case that it really was the jetpack miners in the small villages and it was just psychosis in the cities?
I don't think so, because when I went to the Nauta, because there was a particular video that surfaced from Nauta that I was fascinated by this video. And the video depicted, it was in this neighborhood in Nauta, it was nighttime, and all the neighbors are in a state of panic.
Yeah.
And the dogs are barking, people are yelling, and somebody's capturing this on a cell phone. And in the video, there's a guy with a flashlight.
Yeah.
And he goes, there it is, there it is. And he flashes his flashlight into the trees above this house. And it looks like there's something in the trees.
Huh.
It looks like there's a creature in the trees. And everybody's freaking out, and that happened in Nauta, okay?
Yeah.
This is a city of 36,000 inhabitants. So I wanted to go see if I could find this location during the day to get a sense of what was he pointing at? What are we looking at here? So I was able to find this particular area, and I interviewed the neighbors. And apparently there were multiple incidents that happened at this location, not just one.
Hmm.
And because I showed the neighbors this video, and the neighbor who lives right across the street said, well, I haven't seen this particular thing, but there's these other incidents that happened at the same spot. And what she saw she said one night her and her neighbors saw a flying saucer hovering above the trees. And it deployed a light down into the, down, like as if something was beaming down or something.
Yeah.
And she drew it on the ground. She drew the shape of it and showed me what it was from her perspective, what she saw. It was like a flying saucer and had perimeter of lights. It wasn't a small one like the guys were surfing on. It was a big one.
Sure.
And she said it just hovered there for a moment and then it flew away. And the other neighbors confirm that they've seen stuff like that right there in the yard. And so I filmed the area where this had taken place, and it was apparent to us that whatever this, if there was something in the trees, it had to be very large, because in the video it looks like, because it's nighttime and it's cell phone footage, it looked like there was a tree directly above the house, but in reality the tree isn't directly above the house, it's 50 yards behind the house.
Huh.
And so something happened there on several occasions. And then this lady told me that during this period of time when these indigenous communities are being attacked, she said that they would hear gunshots ringing out on the outskirts of town in Nauta.
Yeah.
And there was, just like in San Antonio, some of the guys who were living in Nauta were walking, doing a patrol, protecting their own village, because the government wasn't doing anything.
Yeah.
They were protecting their own village, in this case, city of Nauta. Guys would be on patrol. And she said one of those guys was her neighbors, one of her neighbors, and he came home that night and she asked him, what were those gunshots? And you know what he saw? He saw two guys surfing on a disc, a hoverboard disc, circular hoverboard, just like the villagers of San Antonio de Pintuyacu. Same phenomenon, covered head to foot in black body armor, helmets, same thing, in Nauta, okay?
That's
so
weird.
bye-bye jetpack, miners with jetpacks. That's not the answer here.
Okay, so then who are they?
So I'll tell you one more anecdote here. So right before we got there, the media in Peru published this story. It was footage of this boy from a village called Bagasan, which is not far from Nauta. And this is all in the general same area. All these stories I'm telling you, generally the same area of the jungle. This was shortly before we got there. And this boy had been opened up like a fish under his jawline. And in Peru, they put everything on TV, like the most grotesque, gruesome car accident. They don't blur anything. They just put it on TV. That's what they do there. So I watched the footage of this boy who they were filming him inside of the clinic, and he was came in, and I mean, he looked like he had fish gills cut under his jaw. And this time it wasn't like Talia, where they were just beginning to cut. They cut, and his skin was just flapping, and he had blood streaming down his shirt, and he was semi-conscious, basically, and he was in shock. And thank God they saved his life. They gave him blood, they sewed him up. He almost died. He was in the hospital for a long time, but they saved his life. And he said that he was attacked by face peelers. Described the same thing. Okay, this is a village called Bagazan, but he was in Nauta. They brought him to Nauta to get treated. And
why did they let him go?
So that is that's where I started to formulate a theory, a hypothesis about this whole situation. After seeing that footage, I thought to myself, and after interviewing the people in San Antonio de Pintuyacu, I thought, if these guys are face peelers, they really, really suck at peeling faces.
Yeah.
With all this technology, with all the time they're operating the jungle, they almost get one kid and one 15-year-old girl.
Yeah, you can make a hoverboard, but you can't rip someone's face off.
Exactly. Yeah. So I thought, something's wrong with this picture. And I failed to mention that they did find a young man in the river. Yeah. And this was filmed. I put it on my YouTube channel, and I got an age restriction on the video.
Fair enough.
It was a guy they were pulling out of the river, and half of his face, or 3/4 of his face, had been surgically removed. And it looks like, this half of his face is just bleached bone. And it's surgical. It's like, if you look at this video, and you can probably still find it online.
Yeah, because you could say it'd be like a piranha.
No, it was not. It was not predators, because it was surgical, the way that this skin had been removed. And I've seen piranhas, the devastation that piranhas inflict on an animal, a dead animal in the water, or a live animal. Yeah. Their teeth marks, well, they bite the bone up. They masticate the bone like it's all, it's not clean.
Yeah.
It's not clean. So this was clean. Somebody had surgically removed this guy's face, okay? So they got one.
Yeah.
They got one, apparently, but it didn't make any sense to me. So my hypothesis is that somebody was operating in the Peruvian Amazon with advanced technology, aerospace technology and otherwise, and they were using the legend of the face peelers as cover for something else. So I think they were purposely instilling fear in the indigenous communities, and not just in the indigenous communities, in the region in general, as cover for some other operation that was happening, so that people would automatically default to the face peeler legend,
Right.
and it would be written off by the public, and it would be written off by the authorities.
Because it's not as though there were dozens of people showing up with surgically removed faces.
No, no. And they were, it was a campaign of terror more than anything, it seems to me. Like I told you, in the village, they would be pulling on the boards of the house, pounding on the walls.
Right.
So it's like they're terrorizing the people purposely. They want them to think that they're the face people.
That's why the cartel hypothesis carries some weight. Is it would, they also, the cartels, if they were involved, would have been terrorizing
Yes, certainly. That's why we thought it was cartels in the
Right,
beginning.
right.
Until you have the aerospace vehicles, and until you have Nauta in the picture.
Right.
Nauta's a hard target.
So then, okay, so this all tracks that it's a terror campaign. They're not just accidentally the worst face peelers ever. So then, what are they covering up?
It gets more conspiratorial because there was some overlap in early July when these incidents started to occur in the jungle, and a military operation being run by the United States government in Peru called Resolute Sentinel. And this operation involved, it was a training exercise.
Yeah.
And it involved the Marines, the Air Force, the Army, the Coast Guard, American Coast Guard, Space Force, and some other American assets, in conjunction with the Peruvian counterparts and those of Brazil, and I believe Uruguay was involved, and I'm pretty sure there's a handful of nations involved. The neighboring nations were involved, except for Bolivia. I think Ecuador was involved. Great Britain was involved. The United Kingdom was involved in this operation. And they deployed serious assets to Peru. Like they had Air Force assets on the ground. They had Navy assets in the waters. The Peruvian military was running battleships and different kinds of Navy assets up the Amazon, and as well as the United Kingdom. And it corresponded. There's overlap with the face peeler phenomenon. Now, that could be completely coincidental, of course. This wasn't the first Resolute Sentinel operation that had happened in Peru. This was
What is it? Just a training operation?
It was a training operation, but my crazy conspiracy theory, which I'm not. Believe me, I'm not.
Hold on!
sold
Don't
on.
bring up any crazy conspiracy.
Okay,
theories on
let's
this. Hold on.
Let's not get crazy here on your show. But and I'm not sure I'd subscribe to this. It's just the crazy conspiracy theory that I like to entertain.
Yeah.
What if there was like a Predator situation happening, like the movie Predator?
Yeah.
When there was a real threat, a real phenomenon happening in the jungle, and that there was a response to this, like we deployed assets to confront this phenomenon, this threat. But in order to cover this real operation, we used a training exercise. So that way you have a reason, you have an excuse to have all of these assets deployed in Peru.
Right.
I mean, I think this is quite common, honestly. I think this is quite common. So
hold on. Of all the things we've talked about, that you say, hold on, now I'm going to really get nuts here. What if the military sometimes had cover stories for their operation?
Well, that's not the crazy part. The crazy part is, what if there was either a human rogue group, who knows who these guys would be, some kind of syndicate, maybe an international syndicate of cartel level operation, but actually much higher than cartel. This would be like a breakaway civilization type component here. People who are in possession of advanced technology, clearly, who were doing something nefarious out there, and we were responding. Or maybe we could even play with the idea, entertain the idea at least, that perhaps there's a non-human component. That's why I said,
well, hold on.
That's why I said the Predators scenario.
Okay, but hold on. I thought the face peelers, the ones who are intentionally very bad at peeling faces, who have all this crazy technology. I thought in this version of it, that's us.
I mean, that's a possibility. That's also a possibility. I don't like that one. I just don't like it. The thought that we would be deploying assets in the jungle and doing this to the people who live there, that's not something, that's not a
But
thought
then
I
why?
like to entertain.
But if it's not us just trying to make a cover for something else, then why were they bungling the face peeling? Because they themselves were covering this international, specter or alien specter was covering for some other thing they were doing.
The answer is I don't know.
Yeah,
But
okay.
but what apparently they were using the face, whoever this was, they were using the face peeler phenomenon as cover
Yeah.
because they knew their activities were going to be noticed. And in order to hide the real purpose and mission,
Yeah.
you're hiding behind a legend, so that way it will be written off. And what happened? It was written off.
Yes. Yeah.
So it succeeded. It succeeded. Everyone thought it was river miners with jetpacks
Right. Right.
attacking these poor indigenous communities.
Yeah.
It succeeded. The operation was successful in that capacity for sure. But
Well, that stuff happens. I'm not saying jetpacks and face peeling necessarily always happens, but it is true that people cover their tracks and there are false flags, and that stuff does happen, throughout all of history. But then we still have no idea what they were actually up to, or
we
who
have no
they were.
idea. I have
or
no
anything.
idea. I don't know who they were. I don't know what they were up to.
But you just said it could be a breakaway civilization or aliens, and you said that as like a throwaway. You said, I don't know, it might be.
Well, I
breakaway.
mean, these are hypothetical scenarios that I'm not necessarily 100% persuaded by anything. I don't know. All I know is that it was real. Something was happening. And let me tell you one more story.
Yeah.
So I come home, I publish my face peeler video on my YouTube channel, and which is an expedition report of what I had learned. And shortly thereafter, there was this account on X, and I think it was called Peru Alien Attacks or something like that. They contacted me, and they gave me the contact information for this gentleman named Pablo,
Okay.
who lived in the vicinity of the city of Yurimaguas, which is kind of it's southwest of the Alto Nanay region,
Okay.
and it's an area of the jungle, another area of the jungle that I'm very familiar with. Yurimaguas, I've done a lot of, I've been there quite a few times. But this was a homestead outside of Yurimaguas in the jungle. So this isn't a community. It's a community, but it's not a village. It's a homestead. So there's a few families living there. And I called Pablo because I was told he had an interesting story to tell. So I talked to Pablo on the phone, and Pablo told me that one day he was bathing in the river, and just as the sun was going down, and suddenly he hears some of the other people in the homestead yelling, "The face peelers, the face peelers." Yeah. He comes running out of the river. He runs into his hut. He grabs his shotgun and his flashlight because it's getting dark. Yeah. And he starts running around the homestead. And he said he saw two guys, same exact situation, dressed in the armored bodysuits. And they weren't on the hoverboards. Yeah. They were just creeping on the edge of the jungle, creeping toward the homestead. Yeah. He saw them. He yelled at them, and he discharged his firearm. And then he started to pursue them because they took off running into the jungle. He's pursuing them through the jungle. He gets close enough to them to get off another shot, and this time he hits one of them. And he said he heard they're always using birdshot in the jungle. Yeah. He heard the BBs dink off of some body armor, right? One of the guys took off into the sky. The other guy was trying to take off, but he couldn't because apparently Pablo had damaged the technology. Yeah. So the guy's trying to lift off, and he can't lift off. So Pablo runs at him and tackles him. He tackles the guy, but the guy doesn't go down. Instead, the guy is lifting off the ground with Pablo holding on to him, but not getting very high, trying to get away. And he pulls out, the assailant pulls out what Pablo says looked like a laser. It looked like one of those hand lasers. Yeah. Pulled out like this laser and shot Pablo with it. And Pablo said, he hit me with the laser and I went unconscious. He said, I woke up, my dad, his father, and his brother found him, and they were waking him up, and he comes to, laying on the ground in the jungle. And he said, whatever they hit me with damaged my heart. He had a heart. He was having heart trouble. He went in to see the doctor, and it messed up like the timing of his heart. I think he had to get a pacemaker installed.
Whoa.
And he believes for sure these are people. These are human beings.
Yeah, yeah.
It was a very human, visceral experience for him.
Yeah.
And he was hands-on, these guys. So that's why
crazy.
That's why I'm very persuaded that we're looking at like some kind of a black ops situation. I'm not saying it's military. I'm saying it could be some sort of an international syndicate. And the last thing I'll say about this, an international syndicate with advanced aerospace technology that's doing really nefarious things with it. And the last thing I'll say about this is some of your audience members are probably familiar with this story, and the guy's name is escaping me right now. I'm sure I'll remember it in a couple minutes. Dr. Stephen Greer, who's a famed ufologist, prominent ufologist, brought forth the testimony of Michael Herrera some years ago. And Michael Herrera, I'm probably going to botch some of the details here, but Michael Herrera was, I think he was a Marine. Hopefully I'm getting that right. And he was deployed to Indonesia in the wake of, I can't remember if it was a hurricane or earthquake. It was a huge natural disaster that rocked the country. Yeah. And they were deployed there for humanitarian purposes to try and help and find people who were missing and so forth. And so he was there with his team, and in the course of them running this operation out there, they encountered a saucer, a massive saucer hovering in a clearing in the jungle. And it was like a flying saucer, but it was hovering there, and it was enormous. It was like the size of a football field. And again, I'm probably going to botch the details. People can go look up Michael Herrera's story online. I believe he was on Sean Ryan and some other shows telling the story. And he and his team, they approached this stationary saucer. It's just hovering there. And when they got in proximity to it, a group of paramilitary guys came out of the jungle and put their guns on them. And he said, these guys, I remember this deal, he said, this detail, these guys, he said, were much better armed than they were as Marines. And it was a very confrontational, scary situation for these guys. And I don't remember the details, but the guys threatened them, and ultimately they let the team go. But he saw that they were loading something onto the saucer, crates. And he saw like oxygen tanks connected to these large like crates. And through some information he gleaned later, he now believes that those crates, that what was in those crates were human beings. That somebody was in Indonesia harvesting, taking advantage of the natural disaster, because a lot of people go missing.
Yeah, right.
You can't find them, right? Taking advantage of that environment to go and kidnap Indonesians. And they were loading them onto the saucer. And he came out with that a couple of years prior to me going into San Antonio de Pinto Yaku. And ultimately, I believe Herrera's story. Ultimately, I get the sense that these two things are somehow connected. That somebody out there, some crime syndicate, some international group, that's why I call them a breakaway civilization, because they're in possession of technology that the rest of us don't have. It's incredibly advanced technology that they're apparently using for the most nefarious things imaginable.
At a basic level, it's human trafficking. But I think the
organ harvesting, human trafficking, who knows what they're doing. But it's obviously nefarious. So maybe these guys in the Peruvian Amazon were doing the same thing, using the face peeler as phenomenon, this cover, as I've said. So peeling some faces, making the villagers think that this is an alien phenomenon or something, when in reality they were out there running some kind of an op that maybe had to do with human trafficking or who knows what. But all I can tell you is that it was real and that it was nefarious. The villagers were freaked out. Everybody I talked to in the city of Iquitos, rather large city in the jungle there, believed that this was happening. None of them thought, oh, that's just people making it up. No. They were deathly serious about this phenomenon out there.
You know what's weird? Well, all of that. But the thing that's really weird about that last story is of everything we've ever talked about in our 8 hours of interviews, that's kind of the most normal one. a crime syndicate terrorizes people and like tries to do bad things to them. That's like the most I thought the face peelers was going to be the wackiest one of all. Weirdly, that's the most down to earth.
Yeah.
And then up from the earth, I guess.
Yeah, frighteningly so. There's something very tangible, very visceral about that. And I do believe that there is some kind of a breakaway civilization. I hope that's the case, because I don't want to contemplate a scenario in which the United States government or some other government is deploying things. Now, we have to understand that, and we're not going to,
It could be, it could be. Those Somalis are pretty good at fraud. Have you considered the Somali hypothesis?
I think you cracked the case.
They're criminal, they're pirates,
We got to go back down, you and I, to see if there's a layering center in Iquitos. That's at the center of this entire thing.
I've cracked the case. We've done it.